So for the final draft of the letter, you'll need to have at least 4 sources that you cite to in the body of the letter and then list in a works cited page as a separate page attached to the letter. Please remember that in order to include the sources on the works cited page, you actually have to use them in the body of the letter. And if you can't give me enough information on the works cited page for me to locate the source, then you don't get to count the source. So just to make sure that we're clear about citation mechanics, I thought I would review some before discussing some other issues with the assignment. So here we have a sample works cited from the drafts, and right away some issues come up. As always, I'm not using student work to shame a student or even to extol or commend a student. When I share student work, the goal is to open up a conversation about what students are doing in the course and how I might direct people to better results. In any case, the style we're using is MLA style. You'll find that on page 139 of your textbooks. You also may be familiar with the Purdue Online Writing Lab, the Purdue OWL, which is an excellent resource for student writing. And they have MLA formatting guide as well. Which is all to say that this is not MLA style. This is APA style, which is a different style, but we're using MLA in this course, and so all citations should be in MLA. What's the difference? Well, there are some key differences despite some key similarities. In all cases, when you are citing to a source, you'll need to make sure you have the author's name, date of publication, the name of the source, and since this is an article published in a larger periodical, the name of the periodical. Some citation styles will ask you to indicate the date that you retrieved something and the web address for which you retrieved it. However, currently in MLA, that's not really necessary. The current status is recommended. However, I find the URLs to be largely a distraction, and really you'd want to make sure that you're using them only in the case of an online source that the only identifying information would be its location on the internet. More and more we're moving towards the use of DOIs, digital object indicators. Identifiers. That are unique number alphanumeric sequences assigned to online sources, particularly scholarly peer-reviewed publications, which we'll discuss in a little bit. In any case, if you are going to use the URL and date accessed, this is the appropriate format here. But I'm more interested in the major differences in the way the author's name, title, and the name of the publication are listed in MLA style. So here's the original article. The author's name is Marina Pitovsky. And in MLA, we use the full name of the author. Date is important, but we don't put it immediately after the author's name in MLA style. Instead, we move to the article title, which, by the way, is not in italics, and you would never change the way that the title appears. MLA also uses what we call initial capital letters, so that the first letter in the words of the title are capitalized. The exception being short prepositions and the like. Titles of articles should be enclosed in quotation marks. So anything that's collected within a larger container, is the term the MLA uses for it, should be enclosed in quotation marks. The container itself, in this case the periodical in which it's published, should be italicized. You can see models for MLA documentation in your textbook. I think they begin about 142. Yeah, 142. These are very easy to use as guides to make sure yours conforms. Note that the date of publication, very important for an article, shows up at the end of the citation, and they use the European format. Note that the article is published September 14, 2021. 14 September 2021. If there are page numbers, in this case there's not, many electronic sources will not have page numbers, you would put the page numbers here following the date of publication, etc. Two additional things to note for works cited pages. One is that in bibliographies of any kind, when you put your source in, the first line of that citation is going to be flush up against the left margin of the page, but the remaining lines are going to be indented in 1/2 inch. The easiest way to do that is to go into your paragraph menu, right-click, paragraph, and then under indentation select special hanging indentation, and voila. We're all good. The other thing to keep in mind is that bibliographic information needs to be alphabetical by the author's last name. This doesn't change from style to style. It says true in MLA as it is in APA. The other side of citation is citing to your sources in the text of your document that will direct your readers to the work cited so that they can see what you're relying upon for information. So in MLA style, the text are in parentheses at the end of the sentence, or the clause, if that makes it easier, of the information they're referring to. So how helpful is this one? It's asking us to acknowledge that this statement here, that if plants can't perform photosynthesis, they'll end up dying, and this is dangerous for the environment along with everyone and everything else. But this seems to me to be a little too obvious to require citation. If the plants all die, well, that's a problem. If they can't perform photosynthesis, then they'll die. I think we all know that. So what is the information that the writer here is getting from the source? Well, it appears to be here. These species are known to interfere with the plant's ability to be able to form photosynthesis. So this is where we would need to put our citation. Here, though, we have comma 1. So in MLA style, we don't use the comma to separate the author's name and the page numbers. Is this enough to get me to where I want to go? Well, let's take a look. Here's the article. Note this is by Maria Kramer and Isabella Guillaume Paz. So Right off, we know that the citation should be Kramer and Paz. Secondly, there are no page numbers here. Where's the 1 come from? There's no page numbers in the source. There are no page numbers in the citation. That's enough for an electronic source in many cases. However, what's still missing here is sufficient framing to understand where this information is coming from and how authoritative and reliable it is. You should always attempt to preface any use of a source by referring to the source that you're using. I think in this case it'd be sufficient to say, according to the New York Times, spotted lanternflies interfere with the plant's ability to be able to perform photosynthesis. Aha! And then following analysis, anybody who then understands the nature of photosynthesis should be able to draw the conclusion that if the plants die, then that's a problem. But let's not neglect the need to be concise when introducing your sources. The same kind of concision that you use anywhere else in business and professional writing. Clarity and accuracy are also important, and I can't let this grammar error go unfixed. We don't say less students, we say fewer students. We use fewer with number. We use less with qualities. So, fewer students enrolled in MBA programs across the USA. We don't use the entire article title to introduce a source. In many cases, you could use the publication, the New York Times, the Journal of the American Medical Association, Harvard Business Review, the Wall Street Journal, things of that nature. Not the article title. In this case, we can go to the other preferred mode of introducing a quotation, identifying the author. According to Jeff Green, in 2021, women secured less than 40%, etc., 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 etc. Do we need any further information? Well, in the case of an electronic source, typically not. If this was a source that actually had pages, then we would. Let's take a closer look. Likely not. This should be sufficient, although, let's not forget, the date of the article is extremely important. For a few final tips on locating and citing to research sources, I want to point you to the library guide developed for the course that's available to you from a link on the Canvas site. There are infographics available for MLA and APA, but in this class we're using MLA. Citation process, and a link, of course, to the Purdue Online Writing Lab, plus more information about using RefWorks as a research management tool. Although in this course we're not going to get so in-depth into a research project that you'll likely need an extensive citation management tool, but you may want to start practicing for future classes. And I wanted to point out the industry company market research tool on the guide that we haven't discussed yet, that gives us some excellent sources of information on corporations. And so there are a number of links here in the industry overview section that will help give you more information on specific companies. There's also some very interesting demographic tools here under the market research section. In particular, Policy Map, Social Explorer. I'd also recommend poking around in Mintel, which is an excellent resource for existing marketing research on a bewildering array of topics, many of which are listed on the front page here, others which you can locate through a search. And let's, of course, not forget U.S. Census resources, which there are 3 links to different styles of interface here that offer excellent information on large populations of people and how they might be impacted by the issues that you're exploring. Well worth your time and effort there, too.